you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today I'm going to be giving you the update to the Off Balance Templar, the Mag Templar specifically. Now I know a lot of things have changed in the last DLC, the Dragon Bones DLC, meaning that Off Balance has been altered as far as the timing is concerned, because it now has a cooldown. And of course with the upcoming content, as far as Somerset is concerned, we are now going to be able to, as long as it comes through, use our staves as 2 pieces instead of 1. So I have taken that into consideration. I will be obviously updating this when Somerset comes out, but of course you need to update for now so it's relevant in the current patch. So this one is actually for Dragon Bones specifically. Now what this does is, of course, it's based on a mixture between single target and AoE type damage for the Mag Templar itself, and of course it's utilizing as much off balance as possible for your group, so then maybe perhaps other people don't have to gimp out some of their setups and use stuff that they wouldn't normally use. So there's a lot of light and damage still, but of course it's been updated for this particular patch, meaning some things had to be changed. Now I'm going to go into stats first of all, so put on some food, put on some of this. 41k Magicka, almost 17k health, not quite, 16.8. Almost 10k stamina, 930 recovery, which isn't that important because we're using heavy attacks anyway. 2.6k spell damage, which actually goes higher. Also 55% crit. Did I put the right potion on? I did. Good. Once you proc the glyph, that's actually 3k spell damage. Now, although that may seem a little low, I mean, you can go higher if you want to change your Moonstone, but personally I prefer the crit because I want to make sure I do crit with those important hits. Now, we're using a Thief, of course, to make sure that our crit is up to 55 rather than being below 50, which I do not like. So that's why that is there. Our resistances are so-so. They're not too bad. I mean, a good amount into spell resistance, a small amount into physical, but you can buff that if you want with either buffs or CPs. It's entirely up to you. We're of course using Minor Slayer because that is on one of our sets, and we're a stage 4 vampire using health and magic food, the blue stuff, maximum level that you can get, with no extra recovery, no need for witch mothers, none of that stuff. So I'm going to go firstly into the skills. I'm going to explain how each one of these works, where they belong, and then I'll get into the passives and stuff. If you're already familiar with the skills, of course, you may want to skip this part, but I wouldn't recommend it because I do explain how this build actually works and why they are there, opposed to why don't you have that on your bar. That's not helpful. This is a build, it's made specifically, and I'll explain exactly why everything is the way it is. But of course, if you've seen this build before and you know how it works and you kind of just want to get into seeing what I've done gear changes and CP wise, then go ahead. First of all, Shock Clench. Now this is in the Destruction Staff skill line. It's the 3rd one you unlock, so you get it quite early on, and this hits the target for a instant burst amount of damage, for a direct hit which splashes and hits nearby enemies, and then it adds a 8-second damage over time effect afterwards. Now the reason it says Destructive Clench, and if you highlight this it says Shock Clench, is because I'm using a lightning staff, so the name changes depending on what element you're using. So you use this first of all, very simple, just hits the target. There's the initial hit, but it then ticks over. As you can see, it's got quite a high status effect chance on there because it made it go off balance straight away. So that's your duration ability. Make sure that starts off at the beginning of every rotation or at the end of every rotation, depending on how you're doing it. Second ability is Beast Trap, Rearming Trap specifically. Now this is in the Fighters Guild skill line. Morph it to Rearming Trap because this will rearm itself once it's finished doing what it's doing. So you'll plop it down there. It captures the target. Even if it's a boss, it'll still fire. There's 6 seconds of physical damage, which is not that important for you because obviously we're using Magicka damage and spell damage and stuff like that. But it will give you minor force, improving your crit damage. So every crits that you take, or deal, sorry, by 10%. So it's very, very strong. You want to keep that up passively as much as possible. Even if it doesn't do that much damage to the target, it does increase your critical damage. Whoop, wrong one. Next ability is, you can morph this one of 2 ways, but I'm going to tell you why I have it this way. Radiant Glory. Now this is in the Dawn's Wrath skill line. It takes a long time to unlock it, so make sure you get a couple of these on your bar while you're leveling up. Now, I've morphed this specifically to Radiant Glory. Now this is Radiant Destruction specifically when you first unlock it, but this version does a little less damage than Radiant Oppression. Radiant Oppression does more damage based on how much Magicka you have left in your bar. Not how much you have in total, but how much is left. And normally at Execute, you don't have much left. But this version of it heals based on a percentage of the damage done. Now, of course, this is more effective the lower the target's health, so under 50% and less. Don't just spam this when the target's full health, it will not help. It does up to 330% additional damage the lower the target's health. Normally, if it's trash, I'll maybe hit them at 40 to 35% health, and if it's a boss, anywhere between 30 and 25%. I wouldn't go for the flat 50 because it's too early and you don't get the big damage bonus for it. But this will look quite low because he's got huge health, but there you go. Everybody's seen a Jesus beam before. Use that at low health inside your rotations to quickly kill the target. That's your main execute. Very, very important. Your main spammable, puncture and sweeps. This is in the Adric's Spear skill line. Morph this from puncture and strikes to puncture and sweeps. It will then become a Magicka ability, and each stab that you do can heal you for 35% of the damage done. Now, this also stacks with healing received and minor and major mending and all those types of things as well. So if you do have buffs on the go, you will actually get bigger heals and, of course, more damage from it. Now, this does damage to enemies in front of you, so anyone in the way of that. Oh, you saw one of my procs go off. But the front target, the one closest to you, will take additional damage. That one will get hit the hardest. But each target hit will heal you. Now, in a light, this is very, very simple. This is on the bar for the passives that it applies. It gives me an additional 5% max magic for being on my bar and gives me a crit bonus. The crit bonus I do have on my potions, but at least this is up all the time, so if I do drop them and I forget to reapply them, which I shouldn't, but in case it happens, this is always on the front bar. It's an additional 10%. I know it says 2191, but that's 10%. They just explain it funny. Now, this is in the Mages Guild skill line. You don't have to have max Mages Guild for this. You can get it at like level 2, I think, and you just morph it to Inner Light. Once it's max, you get the 5% increase to max magic. There are other passives, but I'll go over those in a bit. Now, this one does require Mages Guild 10. This is Ice Comet, which is Meteor when you first get it. Now, you'll have to find between 210 and 240 lore books to unlock this around the world, depending on whether you finish the sets off or not, because you get a bonus for each set that you actually complete collectively. And once you've finished leveling this up and all the rest of it, morph it to Ice Comet. It does more damage with this particular version, but if you want the lesser damage, although it does fire damage instead of ice, the shooting star morph of it actually gives you ultimate back depending on how many enemies you hit. So it's entirely up to you. I use this as a finisher. It's not my main ultimate. I only use it if I don't have enough to cast the back one and the enemy's about to die. But you can morph it either way. It's up to you. Back bar. Harness Magicka. Very, very simple. Going to light armor. Obviously, we're wearing 5 pieces of light armor. This is very important. You must be wearing 5 pieces to be able to use this skill. This is originally annulment, and I morph it to Harness Magicka, and it's very simple. It's a damage shield. Coats my health, protects me from damage. Use it in an emergency, don't spam it because otherwise you'll run out of Magicka. However, if you do get hit with Magicka projectiles, it will actually absorb a set amount of damage and then give you Magicka back. 1, 2, 3, 1 Magicka for each hit or spell absorbed, unless of course the shield runs out. Go over passives in a moment. Back bar again. Blockade of Storms. This is very, very important. This is your main dot that you need to keep on the ground. There's actually 2, but this is the main one. This is essential because this has lots of different effects. It has damage over time to everyone caught in this. It will affect your overall DPS as far as your lights and heavies are concerned because of our Maelstrom weapon, which I will get to if you don't understand how that works. And at the same time, this also knocks concussed enemies off balance. Now, concussion is a status effect from lightning. So if you successfully affect a target with concussion and then you apply this, or if this is applied already, you can then knock them off balance for 5 seconds, meaning your damage will improve based on our CPs. But remember, when off balance is applied, your heavy attack return from your resources is doubled. So take full advantage of those windows of opportunity. There is a 5-second uptime on off balance and a 15-second downtime. Now, if you can get inside those windows and make sure that it's always off balance at the correct time, you can then utilize that, and so can your group as far as overall damage is concerned, if your CPs are in the right place, and of course your sustain, because while it's off balance, you probably should be heavy attacking at that point in time because it's really, really good for your return. Now, this is in the Destruction Staff skill line. Again, second one you unlock, and morph it to Blockade, or Elemental Blockade specifically. The other one lasts less time and explodes, but this one lasts longer and has a larger range. Also, I would recommend getting Crushing Shock. I put it in place of Clench if I need to, if I'm in a fight where there's going to be lots of ranged interrupts, for example. Hellra. When you go up to the first gate, you got 4 flame shapers. They're going to need to be interrupted. I usually put on Crush and Shock in place of this instead. First one you unlock, morph it to Crushing instead of Force Pulse, and you'll be able to range interrupt from 28 meters away. That's a flex slot, but that's one I like to use. Next ability is Vampire's Bane. Now this is in the Dawn's Wrath skill line as well as your Radiant Glory. This is unlocked very, very early on in the game. You can morph it and level it up really, really quick. And this is a single target hit initially and then a damage over time. This also does give you the crit bonus that you have on the front bar as well. But I'm not using it for that, so just ignore that part of it. How that works is very, very simple. There's a fireball. I'll put it on this dude as well. Massive, massive range. I wouldn't spam it. Just leave the dot running. It lasts a really, really long time. In fact, how long is it? Like 12 seconds? Almost 12 seconds. 11.7. 15k dot before any buffs are applied. I haven't even got major sorcery on at the moment. It's really, really powerful. Keep that in your rotation the whole time. Next ability, again, Inner Light is double barred. I've put it in a different place on purpose. It's just how I set my bars up, but you can put it where you want. That way we have 5% max magicka on both bars. You get the crit on both bars as well, so the potion's kind of irrelevant for that bonus. But if you ever switch this out for anything else, at least you'll have the uptime of the crit. You just don't stay on your back bar for too long if you drop this buff. It's entirely up to you. You can switch out for something else if you need to. Blazing Spear, this is an Adric's Spear skill line. This is also your ground damage over time alongside your Wall of Elements. It lasts 8 seconds, same amount of time as Wall of Elements does. But this does magic damage instead of lightning damage every second. And of course a team member or an ally can actually pick this up as a synergy and restore their resources with it as well. So it does do an initial hit of damage as well, but the main two you want to keep on the ground all the time is your spear and your Wall of Elements. Keep those two down and anything inside of it will take damage from both. Very, very simple. Don't let those run out. I will get to rotation and make a lot more sense in a moment. Thunderous Rage, this is in a Destro Staff skill line. Of course, you have to be level 50 to unlock it. Morph it to Elemental Rage. This has additional time added to it because it's lightning, so this lasts 9 seconds and does a stupid amount of damage in area of effect. If I've got any ulti, there you go. Keep all those dots down and do your stabbies. Everything's going to die. It's very, very, very strong. It's quite expensive, but I would use that as your main ultimate pretty much all the time. Ice Comet I don't use as main ultimate because if it misses the crit, then you just wasted the whole ultimate, whereas this does a lot more kind of devastation type damage. But if it's almost dead and you haven't got enough for the Destro ulti, fire this instead. Now, passives. Passives are very, very important. Adric's Spear, get every single one of these, and you can go through them in your own time if you get the chance, but you do want these because they increase your spell resistance. They have a stupid amount of damage here. When you deal damage with an Adric's Spear ability, you have a 25% chance to deal additional 1.5k physical or 4.4k magicka damage, whichever is higher. Of course, our magic damage is higher, and this can affect every 0.5 seconds. So, while this is channeling for 1.1 seconds, or this is running for 8 seconds. They're both Adric's Spear abilities, and each one of them can proc every half a second, depending on when the damage lands. So they can proc together. So one can fire, then the next can fire, as long as they're timed correctly. So you want to keep one skill of each, or one skill from that skill line on both bars, and make sure they're always running to take advantage of this. It's really, really strong. This one increases the amount of damage you can block, and this one increases the amount of crit damage you do. That's right, as a Templar, you should have a lot of crit, or a decent amount of crit chance, because you actually benefit from bonus damage when you crit. Hence why I'm using the Thief Core to make sure my crit is fairly high. Alongside the Beast Trap as well, which is minor force. You can see where I'm going with this. I've got quite a lot of crit damage already. Dawn's Wrath. Increases duration of your Sun, Fire, Eclipse and Nova abilities. Nova I haven't gone over, but this is a damage mitigation skill. Solar Prism, this is actually morphed into, and of course it does damage to the targets caught in it as well. But we'll go over that another time. That's more for defensive rather than offensive, although the damage is actually quite nice. But above all, this does increase the damage, the time of your abilities in here, including this one and including this one as well. So it's maxed out. Casting Dawn's Wrath ability generates 3 ultimate. This can affect every 6 seconds. That's very important. If you use this every rotation, and you say you have a 10-second rotation for argument's sake, you're guaranteed to get 3 ultimate every time you fire that. However, if you spam it, it won't. It'll only happen once every 6 seconds. So each rotation, as long as you've got that skill running, you'll gain ultimate. Which of course we do want, because we want to make sure we do more damage. Casting Dawn's Wrath ability grants you minor sorcery to you and your group for 20 seconds, increasing your spell damage by 5%. So, again, for firing this ability, For the next 20 seconds, you and 5 other members around you have increased spell damage. Very, very nice indeed. And reduces the magicka, stamina, and ultimate cost for your abilities by 4%. Get this as soon as possible. It reduces the cost of everything. You need that. Restore and light. Now, we're not really using any abilities from here, but they do benefit you if you were going to switch some out. So I would recommend getting all these passives. Especially stuff like this, if you're using Rune Focus, for example, which is a resist bonus, and it can give you magicka back if you morph it to Channel and Focus, this one here. You actually benefit from keeping the buff after you leave the area. So it's also gives you minor mending as well, which increases the heals you get from your puncher and sweep. So if you are in a situation where you need more resistances, you can use this, switch it out as a flex slot, perhaps in a light on your back bar, increase your resist, get some recovery, and also benefit from this bonus here. So if you do have to leave the area or you have it running, you get bigger heals. This one isn't necessarily essential, but this one is. Increases your resurrection speed by 20%. Resurrected allies will return with 100% more health. Now, that means that obviously when they come back, they get more health than they would do if they were resurrected. And of course, you res faster. As a Templar, you res very, very fast. So if someone's down, pick them up. You're the quickest one at doing it. Don't leave them on the floor while you're doing your deeps and just look at the soles of their feet and wonder why they aren't getting up. Pick them up. Destro Staff, of course, you're going to want every single one of these. This increases the amount of damage we do in area of effect when we fire off a heavy attack. 137%, in fact. It's a splash damage bonus. So what I mean by that is, let's move this dude out of the way. Move him over here. Flame staves, ice staves, all that kind of stuff, including the light attack for this, hit one target. But if you heavy attack, it's splash damage. Now obviously if I'm buffed that would be a lot more, but you see where I'm going. It adds splash damage to targets nearby. So you want to get that as soon as possible. Max that out. Also, your Destro Staff abilities ignore 10% of the enemy's spell resistance. Destro Staff abilities specifically, so your Crush and Shock, your Destructive Clench, your Wall of Elements, and your light and heavy attacks. Not any temper abilities, just Destro abilities. Also your Destro ulti, that also counts. Increases your chance to apply burning, concussion, chilled status effects by 100%. That's by 100% of the flat value that you have to start with. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed, but it does mean that while you're using certain elements, your status effects are higher, or the chance is higher, which means we can have a higher chance to gain concussion while the Wall of Elements is down, forcing the off balance, which is what we want. This one here you do want to get. This is very important. Light and staves increase your damage done with area of effect abilities by 8%. This splash damage, 8%. This first initial hit, another 8%. Wall of Elements, spears, they're all AoE, 8%, and so is this. All of that is 8% increased damage because they're all area of effect. Now, if you use a flame staff, that's different. You can use a flame staff if you want. That will mean your single target damage abilities will be increased by 8%. So your AoE will drop, your single target will increase. Now I tried with both variations and the actual outcome is about the same. They're very, very close because you lose one, you gain the other and vice versa. So whichever one you preference is entirely up to you, but for the purpose of it being an off-balance build and forcing the off-balance, I want that additional status effect. I definitely want the additional AoE alongside the same sort of single target that I'm getting anyway, so it works out much, much better for me, but the choice is yours. Also, when you kill an enemy with a destruction staff ability, you will restore 3600 magicka. That means if you light attack it and kill it, heavy attack it, clench, or Wall of Elements, if any of those kill it, you get magic back. Very, very handy indeed. So play tactical. If you see something that's almost dead, it's got like, I don't know, 10k health left, give it a quick sneaky heavy attack and just get that magic back off it. You don't have to spam a skill to do so. Gone through those. Light armor, this is essential. Make sure you get every single one of these. They benefit towards your crit chance, towards your spell resistance, your recovery, your reduction to cost, and of course increases your spell penetration by 4884. Now that is incredibly high. Obviously targets have a set amount of resistance, in fact 18200, and you want to get that down to as minimum as possible. Now, fully trial buffed, of course, you may have others using buffs and bonuses that will lower the resistance more and more and more, so this will stack on top of that, and eventually, hopefully, you can hit 0 doing as much raw damage as possible. This will contribute towards it. It's very, very strong indeed. So make sure you get all light armor bonuses and passives. Now, medium's not essential. If you're going 5-1-1, which I'm not at the moment, I'm actually 6-1. You can go 5-1-1 if you want. Then I would recommend getting this one here to reduce the cost of dodge roll. I'd also recommend getting these if you have spare skill points, because they reduce cost of stamina abilities, and they also allow you stamina recovery, which you will need because you block and all that kind of stuff. They're not necessarily essential, like I said, but you can get them if you have the spare points. But don't get this because you are not using 5 medium, so you won't benefit from this passive. Heavy armor, again, these two are quite nice. They give you resistances and they give you returned resources. Small amount, but they give you returned resources based on how many heavy pieces you're wearing. If you get hit once every 4 seconds, every little counts. But above all, you must get this one. This will give you 2% additional health for each heavy armor piece worn. We're wearing 1, so I do want that extra health. Now you can get more health, you can get more magic, you can get more stamina if you use 1 medium, 1 heavy and 5 light, but at the moment I'm quite comfortable using 6 light. It's entirely up to you. So next up, vampire. Yes, I'm a stage 4 vampire, always am. 10% increase to mag and stam recovery, really essential stuff. And of course reduces the damage you take by up to 33% based on your missing health while below 50%. So the lower your health is, the less damage you take. Yes, I know fire hurts you more, but stay out of it. Most fire mechanics, although they will one-shot you whether you're a vampire or not, are avoidable in some way or another. I've gone over that in many videos in the past, but just saying, stay out of the fire. It's not, oh my god, the fire's there. Just pay attention to what you're doing. Keep your buffs up, you should be fine. Also, if it's on the floor, step out of it. If it's being fired at you, block it or dodge roll it. Simple as that. There's lots of other ways around it depending on certain mechanics of certain fights as well, but I have gone over those in previous videos, so I won't bore you with the details on those today. Fighter skills. You are going to need Intimidating Presence to make sure your Beast Trap's cost is reduced by 15%, and you are going to need Banish the Wicked. Anything you kill that happens to be Undead, Daedra or Werewolf will grant you 9 ultimate each. So if you kill 10 skeletons, it's 90 ultimate. Simple as that. As long as you kill them. Very effective passive. You are going to need that. Mage's Guild, obviously since I'm Mage's Guild 10, I have unlocked everything and bought them all. And this gives you increased max magicka and magicka recovery based on how many Mage's Guild abilities you have on your bar. 2% for each. So this is 2% max magic and recovery, and so is this one. So I get 4% for these two being on the bar. Even though this gives me 5 already, I still get the further 2 on top of it. Undaunted, this is very important. Take the synergies. If you see a synergy on the ground, it's going to be beneficial to you. It's going to do damage, or it's going to heal you, or it's going to shield you, or whatever. It's going to be beneficial. Take those bloody synergies, and for doing so, you will get resources back. Don't just leave it there and go, oh, that's the tanks. It's not the tanks. It's a synergy for you to take. Take it. If you want a spear, throw in one. You can throw spears. Increase your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% per different armor type worn. Now, like I said already, I am wearing 6 light and 1 heavy through personal preference, but if you want to go with more health, a little bit more magicka, you'll have less crit and a little bit less recovery, so it won't be massively different. It will just be minor. It's entirely up to you, depends on what you're comfortable with. Then you can go with, like I said, 1 heavy, 1 medium, 5 light, and then you'll get 6% across the board. I do normally personally favour that, but for this particular setup, I'm actually quite comfortable with this. Again, another choice you can make. Siege Shield, I haven't bought it because I've got skill points to get it, but I haven't bought this yet, but you will need to buy this if you are going to do Sanctum or Fidia. Your raid leaders will tell you about that one. Keep a spare skill point for this, you're going to need it. We are high elf, of course. Make sure that you get every single passive here because it benefits your recovery. 9% there, it gives you more max magic, 10% there, which is huge, and of course increases your flame, frost, and shock damage by 4%. Finally, the most important passive in my opinion is medicinal use. You don't have to have all these maxed out and keep them. You can just dump them and spend the skill points elsewhere if you want, but I highly recommend getting medicinal use and getting this to level 3 and leaving it there, because this will make your crafted potions last longer. Now I'm using spell pots, which are expensive, and with this passive they last 47 seconds instead of 36, meaning the cooldown on potions, which is 45 seconds, is actually less than the duration of the potion, meaning as long as I don't ever let it run out for more than a second or so, I can have permanent uptime on my buffs. Now the potions that I'm using are, where are they? Here they are. Spell power potions, which are made with, let me remember this one, cornflower, lady smock, and water hyacinth. Now they are expensive, like I said, so don't go mad. Make sure you use them for special occasions if you want, but I use these pretty much all the time. They give you crit, they give you major sorcery, and they give you magicka return as well as recovery. So very, very nice indeed, if you can afford that stuff. If not, then you can just put on entropy on your bar, which is in the Mage's Guild skill line, and you can use that to give yourself major sorcery instead. It's entirely up to you. Gear. Now I'm going to go over the gear. Don't panic. Yes, I know it says infallible ether. 1, you don't have to farm a sharpen one. You can change traits if you want. 2, you don't have to have infallible ether. What you can do is you can go 5 War Maidens instead, or 4 War Maidens. Entirely up to you. You can go with a monster set and have 4 War Maidens, or you can go without a monster set and have 5. But for this particular setup for myself, I'm using 4 infallible ether, 1 lightning staff of course, and 3 jewelry. Now when this changes on Somerset, this will be a 5th piece, because it will count as 2. But for now, we're using it for the 4th piece because we get the spell damage. What this does is it will give you spell crit, which we do need. We want to crit as much as possible because we get the bonus damage. It gives you minus slayer, which increases your damage done inside trials and dungeons by 5%. And then we're using another sneaky set alongside of it. This one isn't the sneaky one, but Groftar. I have used multiple monster sets with this particular setup. Alhambris performed quite badly, believe it or not. In comparison to this, it was actually about 3k less. It doesn't mean that the set is 3k DPS less overall, it just means it was on this particular setup. Also, Xan was very, very nice, but the cooldown was quite large, and because of that, the damage overall was actually the same. Except Xan's single target, this is anything you're next to, so it's AoE. So this was more effective overall. So for this, I'm using 2 pieces Groftar, which is max Magicka, and then when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to, we'll show you, do this. Where's the skeleton? I moved him, didn't I? Let's hit him with something. There you go. Lots of shiny lava, killing everything inside of it, hitting it once a second for 5 seconds, with a 5-second cooldown. And as you saw, they were burning, so that can give a burning status effect as well, which is quite nice. And the 5-piece set, the other 5-piece set I'm using is Overwhelming. Now this has match magic, spell damage, and then when you activate a class ability, specifically, you do 2.5k shock damage every second for 6 seconds. The closest enemy within 12 meters. And because it's shock damage, it can also create concussion, which inside of Wall of Elements can create off balance. I think you can see where I'm going with this. Now, it's class ability specific. So this is a class ability. So is your Jesus Beam, so is your Vampire's Bane, so is your Spears. There aren't many situations where this would necessarily be beneficial for most classes, but because we have class spammables rather than weapon spammables, it's a lot easier to proc it. There you go, see the blue symbol in my buff timers? You see him getting zapped? Now that can actually happen straight away as soon as it's run out, although I'm not being that lucky this time. There you go, it's on again. It happens a lot. You can have 100% uptime on it if you're very, very lucky, because the cooldown is the same time as the duration of it. So really, really nice indeed. This is from Tempest Island. This is from Vaults of Madness, and of course the Undaunted chest. And Infallible Ether is from any of the Craglorn trials. You can do it on normal, pick them up on normal, it's absolutely fine. And of course I'm using the Maelstrom Lightning Staff with poison on the back. The poison specifically is made with Nightshade, Nirnroot, and I've forgotten the last one, Fleshfly Lava. Now these are really, really nasty, and they do contribute to quite a lot of your damage. So if you've got the materials, I would strongly recommend making these. Failing that, put a shock glyph on the back bar. Now this is charged on purpose to give an increased status effect once I fire Wall of Elements, and this is sharpened on purpose to make sure I have the highest damage I can get as far as my flat damage is concerned, especially if I don't have full trial buffs. If I do have full trial buffs, I drop a couple of my CPs, but I'll get to those in a minute. Now, where am I? Jewelry, I did briefly say they're ether. You can have 3 ether here and then 5 on the body for Overwhelming if you want, or whichever order you can fit them, as long as you've got the full bonuses on the front bar. Make sure there's spell damage on all of them. Now, as far as layout is concerned, I would highly recommend Divines on all the small pieces and Infused on the large, but that's entirely up to you. You can go full Divines if you want. You'll just drop a little bit of Magicka. Now, I'm going to go briefly over the rotation before I get to champion points. It's a little tricky to start with. but we'll go with this. Just stay with me if you can. Start with your beast trap, and you swap your bar. You want a beast trap down straight away. Your spear must go down. Then light attack, Vampire's Bane, which I'll show on the skeleton in a minute. Then light attack, Wall of Elements, and swap bars. On your front bar, light attack, Destructive Clench instantly, and then light attack, Puncture and Sweeps, light attack, Puncture and Sweeps, light attack, Beast Trap, swap. Now you'll notice I did 2 stabs then. You can actually get away with 3 sometimes, but it depends on the situation, depends on how fast you are with your rotation and whether you got away with it or not. If not, your dots will run out on your back bar and you'll have to go to the front again and it gets all messy. So most of the time use 2, but if you got comfortable with it, you can use 3. Now, this is gonna not show an accurate figure because I'm not buffed or anything as such, but this is how it looks when you put it all together. Beast Trap swap, Spear, light Vampires, light Wall of Elements, light Clench, light Stab, light Stab, light Beast Trap swap, Spear, light Vampires, light Wall swap, light Clench, light Stab, light Stab. Now if you're running low on resources, when you get to the back bar, it's Spears, light Wall, heavy. Vampire's Bane, heavy again. Let go, Spear, light Wall swap. See, the back bar rotation was a little different then. That's if you're running low. I'll do that again. If you're running low on resources, you're kind of around 40% or so. Spear, light, Wall, hold heavy. Vampire's Bane, hold heavy again. Spear, Wall, swap. Just to keep the uptime on the dots. Because if you just put them down, did 2 heavies and switch to the front, they would run out. So you have to double cast them, but you're doing 2 heavies so you get the resources back anyway. That's just how you help your sustain if you get in trouble. Apart from that, the rest of the time, it's the same as I just explained a moment ago. You may want to rewind that, but don't worry, that'll be on the website as well. Also on your front bar, if you're running out on your front bar and you're really struggling, keep an eye on this target skeleton or the target what you're up against. And if he's off balance, you want to take advantage of that window. It's only 5 seconds. So now he's off balance. Instead of a stab, I'll do a heavy. Then I'll get one in. So replace one whole stab with a heavy. Wall swap, clench. We'll pretend he's off balance. Oh, there he goes. He's off balance now. Pretend. Heavy attack him. Oh, he did. There you go. Heavy attack him. Then make sure you're on time to get your dots back on again. It's tricky. But I'll explain once more. Spear, Vampire, light Wall, light clench, 2 stabs with a light attack in between each one. Beast Trap swap. Spear, Vampire, Wall, clench, 2 stabs. Beast Trap swap. Running out of resources. Spear, Wall, heavy. Vampire's Bane to keep the dot up. Heavy again. Spear, Wall, keep dots up. Start again from scratch. Back to normal. 2 stabs. And continue. Simple as that. You've got a spammable rotation as such with lots and lots of light attacks in there, and if you get in trouble you can go onto your back bar and you can heavy attack with that or sneak in one on the front. It's up to you. But because you're using 2 lightning staves, you get a lot of splash damage from those heavies, you get a big bonus from your maelstrom weapon, and of course you get resources back. I did forget to mention about the maelstrom weapon specifically for those of you that don't know, but while your Wall of Elements is down, your light and heavy attacks are increased by 1, 3, 4, 1, and that can crit and multiply on top of all your other bonuses as well. So it's very, very strong. Key point is to make sure whatever target you're fighting is inside of that. So any of these or these hit really hard. Now I'm going to go over the CPs really quickly, then I'm going to show you a quick demonstration on a target dummy, just showing you a full rotation. It's not a 6 mil or a 51 mil or anything like that. It's a demonstration of how you go about hitting a target. Kind of just like I did then, but with a result at the end. Now, champion points. This is very important. We'll start with the red tree as usual. Pretty much the same as all my other setups. 28 into Ironclad. You can alter this depending on the fight. This will give you protection against single target or direct damage attacks. Most of them should be hitting a tank, but it's nice for you to have some protection to that just in case something goes wrong. 75 into Hardy, 75 Elemental. Don't put any more into these because if you put 25 more points into it to get to 100, it will only give you 1%. It's not worth it. use your points elsewhere. Like 28 points into here would be non-existent if I put 25 into here. There'd be nothing I can get from it. So use them wisely. 51 into thick skinned, reducing the amount of damage you take from damage over time effects, which do work together, by the way. If this is a physical damage over time, like a poison, if you like, ticking over for 6 seconds, these two will both benefit each other. It's a dot and it's poison. They work together, and the same with these as well. 11 points in a quick recovery for the 3% healing received. Now, if you put 10 points in here, that's what I really want because I want the passive, but 11 points hits a jump point, so this will help you a lot more. But I basically want it for this. Field Physician. While you're resurrecting another player, and you will be, make sure that you have this passive because you will take 15% less damage. It's really, really useful. You res fast. You're going to be resing people anyway, and if you do so, you take less damage while doing it. 40 points into Warlord to reduce our cost of break free by 16%. We don't have a lot of stamina, but you are going to need this because you will get stunned. 75 points into Tenacity, 75 points into Arcanist. Same applies to the diminished returns as far as these are concerned. You can go to 100 if you want, but the bonus is going to be absolutely terrible. Save your 25 points and use them elsewhere. For example, some into here and some into here. You're going to be dodge rolling from time to time. You want to reduce the cost. 48 points into Tumble is really, really nice. And we've got 2 points spare that aren't going to go anywhere and benefit us. So 2 points into block cost reduction. Better get 1% of that than no percent of nothing. 51 points into Elfborn, giving us a 19% increase to our crit damage. We do want to crit a lot, and we want to make sure it's boosted. We have a base bonus to crit damage. We have our Beast Trap, which gives us crit damage bonus. We want to make sure we buff this up a bit, but not too much, because we want to make sure we get enough of everything else. 75 points into Elemental Expert. You can go higher, but I wouldn't recommend it, because you're going to waste points getting that 1%. It's going to take you forever to get there. 25 points, in fact, so use them elsewhere, like this. 9 points into Spell Erosion. Now, solo or dungeons, this is absolutely fine and you will benefit quite a lot from it. However, if you're in a trial and you know for sure that you are 100% optimized, you know you've got all the shiny buffs and you're definitely going to hit 0 penetration on the target, make sure you put this down to 1 point and you'll have enough to hit cap. Along with Sharpened, that is, by the way. Staff Expert increases your light and heavy attacks, and of course increase Master at Arms as well a little bit to make sure your direct attacks are improved. That's your light attacks, your destructive clench, and your initial hit from spears and stuff like that. This is for damage over time, of course, your puncture and sweeps, your spear shards, your wall of elements, your destructive clench once it is already attached to the target. All that kind of stuff is all affected by this. And of course, above all, 75 points in this tree will give you the exploited passive, meaning that if enemies are off balance, for the 5 seconds out of every 20 that they can actually go off balance, you will get an additional 10% damage. That's all damage that you do. Also, that counts alongside the 70% increase you get from a heavy attack while a target's off balance. So you can see how these kind of mount up quite nicely. Also, don't forget your heavy attack is a damage over time as well because you're using a lightning staff. Now, like I said, I'm going to show you a quick demonstration of this kind of in action against the skeleton before we wrap this up. The friend involved is applying Major Breach and Minor Magic still with Elemental Drain, and that is it. There's no additional buffs, no additional bonuses, no debuffs, no reduction cost, no nothing. Just Ele Drain, that's it. Okay, so hopefully that helped. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. I was going to leave this guy until Somerset, of course, knowing full well that the staves are going to be used as 2 pieces instead of 1, but I don't want to leave people hanging with nothing, because of course a lot of people do still use this setup, and they do still like the Mag Templar, especially set up this particular way. Like I said in the video already, there are some options. You can change your execute to a different version, you can slot a couple of different abilities, or you can use 5 War Maiden instead of Ether and drop a monster piece. Or you can use 4 War Maiden if you don't have Ether, it's entirely up to you. Also, don't forget you can go 5-1-1 instead of 6-1. Your call. Anyway, once again, thank you all very, very much for watching. If you're not subscribing, please do hit that button, it is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support the channel outside of YouTube, there are some links in the description for Patreon, for Facebook, and of course, the website XynodeGaming.com, which, by the way, has had some new stuff added to it recently. For those of you that have been watching for a while, you're probably aware that I have a new dungeon series called All About Mechanics, where I'm going to go through every single dungeon in sets of tiers, obviously up until the most difficult ones, showing veteran and hard mode and how to complete them with all the mechanics intact. So if you haven't seen that series already, it is ready, it has started, the guides are starting to come on the website as well, so keep your eyes peeled for those. Anyway, I'm waffling. Once again, thank you all very, very much for watching, and bye-bye.